The first thing I'm going to teach you before we play anything is I'm going to teach you how to hold the slide and how to get good control over the slide when you hold it in your hand. If you look at the way my hand looks, as if I'm about to play slide, you can see that, first of all, the slide is on my ring finger. I like playing with my ring finger a lot. I think it gets great control, and some of my favorite slide players that really influenced me also played a lot with their ring fingers, so that was where I started. Before I put the slide on my hand, I think about my hand being parallel with the ground. So if the ground's here, my hand is just like the ground, palm facing up, and then I bend my fingers like this. You'll notice my fingers are bent. They're not straight like this, but they're bent. And I put the slide on my ring finger just like that. Now if you'll notice, let's say I take the slide off and leave my finger where it is. My finger, like I said, is bent inside. And because it's bent, even though the inside of this slide is actually wider than my finger is around, if I turn that upside down, I still have a good grip with just that one finger on the slide. I'm not letting that slide go anywhere. It's not moving around. It's not rotating. It's under control because my finger's bent inside, gripping it from the interior. Also notice the slide is going to this knuckle right here. It stops at that knuckle because my hand is flat, my palm is flat, and my finger's bent. The slide stops at that knuckle. I don't want the slide to go all the way to this knuckle. I don't want it to go all the way to the palm of my hand. If it was all the way to the palm of my hand, I wouldn't have good range of motion with the rest of my fingers. If the slide is like this, I've got control of it. I've got good range of motion. I can play chords. I can play soloing with my hands, with my other fingers, and that slide just stays right there. The last thing I do before starting to use the slide is I lightly let those fingers, my middle finger and my pinky finger, just cradle the slide. It doesn't have to be real tense. You don't want any of your arm, wrist, or fingers to be tense. You want them to be nice and relaxed, in control. So it's just relaxed control is what you want over the slide. Then notice my thumb is out, almost like I'm giving a thumbs up, and then I put my hand, smooth my hand to where the neck is. So you can see if I rotate that guitar down, you can see my thumb is behind the neck and it's facing the headstock right here. It's sort of shooting up that headstock. Again, if I just keep my hand where it is, you can see it's sort of like a thumbs up. Palm is flat to the ground or parallel with the ground. I go right against the strings. When you start playing with the slide and you start hitting those first notes, the most important thing is to look at those frets and make sure your slide, the middle of that slide, is right above the middle fret. When you're fingering notes on the fret, your finger's on the wooden part, it's between the metal frets. But when you play slide, you're going to want to play on the fret. So there's the fret I want to play right there, the 9th fret. I'm going to put the slide, the middle of that slide, right on top of that metal fret. And I'm going to push down just hard enough to let the note sound. Right there on the 9th fret, I'm playing the D, the G, and the B string. If I'm pushing in too hard, if I'm pushing that slide down with too much pressure, it's going to actually fret the note. See, you don't hear any of that slide because I'm pushing down too hard. It's actually fretting those notes. If I don't push down hard enough, you're going to hear the notes, the strings rattle against the slide. You might hear the notes, but it sounds pretty terrible when you do that. So you want to find that balance. That's the tricky part right off the bat, right at the beginning, is finding that balance between pushing it down just hard enough and then not pushing down hard enough and having it rattle. And the key to getting a good pressure and getting good consistent pressure when you slide up and down the neck is that thumb back here. That thumb is so important to be on the back of the neck for so many reasons. The first reason why it's important is because it allows you to gauge the amount of pressure you're putting down on those strings. I can feel it. You're just lightly touching the back of the neck. You're not pushing in like you're doing a bar chord or something. You're not pushing in like you're fretting the note. That thumb is just back there to give you a reference point. The other benefit to having your thumb on the back of the neck, sort of pointing towards that headstock, is because you want, when you're playing these three notes right here that we're playing, you want them all to be in tune. So you want them all to be down the center of the slide and the slide to be right over the metal fret. If your thumb is over the neck like this, then that's not going to work as well, because see how my slide instantly became crooked when my thumb went over the neck? That's one of the things I see almost everyone do right off the bat when they pick up a slide, and they play for a while and they're never quite in tune on chords. If I play a chord like that, it sounds out of tune instead of, so that's in tune. If I move my thumb over here, it's out of tune. So make sure your thumb, even if you play like this, even if you play fretted with your thumb over here, when you play slide, move that thumb back and you'll find that your slide straightens out and your chords fall into tune. A great way to practice getting in tune and learning visually where your slide needs to be when you want to be over a fret is to use a tuner. I recommend definitely getting a chromatic tuner. It doesn't matter what brand necessarily, just a good, reliable chromatic tuner. This one I've got right here clips onto the headstock of the guitar, and it'll tell me what note I'm playing, and it'll tell me whether it's sharp, flat, or in tune. So if I'm playing a note, let's say I'm playing this note right here, the G string on the 9th fret. Let's say I want to play that note, I slide into it, and I look at my tuner, and it shows green right on the E. That's the note. It shows that I'm right in tune right there. If I were to play it, and maybe it looks straight to me, maybe it sounds all right, maybe it looks all right, and I play like that, it's going to tell me that I'm flat. It's going to tell me I'm a little flat, and then I've got to look at the tuner and say, wait a second, let me move this up until I'm good. Now I'm right on E again. So when you're practicing these songs, or you're practicing scales, you're practicing soloing with the slide, I would recommend at first always have a chromatic tuner either plugged into the guitar, use one with a microphone, or use one of these ones that picks up the vibration of the guitar, and check your tuning constantly to make sure that you're creating good visual references for your own slide playing, and that you're always keeping it in tune. Because think about it, if you're playing down here, my head's up here, I'm looking at the slide that way, it looks like I'm in tune when the slide's higher than the fret because I'm looking at an angle. What the tuner's going to tell me is whether I'm actually in tune or not. So whether it looks like you're over the fret or not, you need to trust the tuner, because the tuner is telling you exactly what note you're playing and whether you're sharp or flat.